The small transport shuttle moved quietly through the dark space between stars. It was an old ship, nothing special. The kind of ship that carried tourists, students, and workers from one planet to another. The kind of ship that nobody important ever noticed. Inside the shuttle, a young human woman sat alone in the passenger cabin. Her name was Yuna. She had dark hair tied back in a simple knot, and she wore plain clothes that looked like they had been washed many times. On her lap sat a worn canvas backpack, old and faded, with patches sewn onto the spots where the fabric had torn. She was reading a book, a real paper book, which was rare these days. Most people used screens, but Yuna liked the feel of pages between her fingers. She turned each page slowly, taking her time. There was no rush. The journey to the next station would take 3 more hours. The shuttle pilot, a young man named Do-yun, walked back from the cockpit to check on his only passenger. He was 26 years old, with a friendly smile and tired eyes. He had been flying this route for 2 years now. "Can I get you anything?" he asked. "Water, something to eat." Yuna looked up from her book and smiled. "Water would be nice, thank you." Do-yun nodded and walked to the small kitchen area. He poured water into a cup and brought it back to her. "Long trip, huh? Where are you headed?" "Just visiting family," Yuna said. She took the water and sipped it. "What about you? Do you fly this route often?" "Every week," Do-yun said with a small laugh. "It's not exciting, but it pays the bills. I have a daughter back home. She's 3 years old. Every credit I earn goes to her future." Yuna's eyes softened. "That's beautiful. What's her name?" "Somi," he said, and his whole face lit up when he said it. "She's the best thing that ever happened to me." They talked for a few more minutes. Do-yun told her about his daughter, about how she was learning to walk, about the little songs she liked to sing. Yuna listened carefully, asking questions, laughing at the right moments. She seemed like such a normal young woman, kind, gentle, curious about the world. Eventually, Do-yun returned to the cockpit, and Yuna went back to her book. Neither of them knew that death was approaching. The Velkari raider ship came out of nowhere. It had been hiding behind an asteroid field, waiting for exactly this kind of target. A small civilian shuttle with no weapons and no military escort. Easy prey. The raider ship was called the Ravager's Fortune, and its crew had done this 1,000 times before. They would board a civilian transport, take the cargo, capture any passengers worth ransoming, and disappear before anyone could respond. They were very good at what they did. Commander Ravik stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the transport shuttle on the main screen. He was tall for a Velkari, with gray skin and 4 arms that ended in sharp-clawed fingers. His eyes were yellow and cold, like a predator watching its meal. "One life sign in the cockpit," reported his second officer Tan. "One in the passenger cabin, that's it. Just 2 beings on board." Ravik smiled, showing rows of pointed teeth. "Perfect. Disable their engines, prepare the boarding team." The attack was fast and brutal. The Ravager's Fortune fired 2 precise shots at the shuttle's engine. The small ship shuddered and began to drift, powerless and helpless in the void. Do-yun tried to send a distress signal, but the raiders had already jammed all communications. He tried to restart the engines, but they were completely destroyed. There was nothing he could do. When the boarding tube connected to the shuttle, Do-yun stood up from his pilot's seat. He was not a fighter. He had no weapons, but he was not going to let them take his passenger without trying to do something. The airlock door burst open, and 5 Velkari raiders stormed in. They were tall and terrifying, covered in armor, carrying energy weapons that glowed with deadly blue light. Do-yun raised his hands. "Wait, please. There's no cargo here worth taking. Just let us go. I have a daughter." The leader of the boarding team didn't even let him finish. He fired a single shot, and Do-yun fell to the floor of his own ship. He was dead before he hit the ground. In the passenger cabin, Yuna heard the shot. She heard the heavy footsteps coming closer. Slowly, carefully, she closed her book and put it in her backpack. Then she sat very still and waited. The raiders found her like that, just sitting there, calm, quiet, not screaming or crying like most captives did. One of the raiders grabbed her roughly by the arm. "Get up, soft skin, you're coming with us." Yuna did not resist. She did not fight. She let them drag her to her feet and push her toward the airlock. As they passed through the cockpit, she saw Do-Yun's body lying on the floor. His eyes were still open. There was a photograph sticking out of his shirt pocket, a picture of a little girl with a bright smile. Yuna looked at the photograph for a long moment. Her face showed nothing. No fear, no anger, just a quiet, deep stillness that the raiders did not notice or understand. They brought her aboard the Ravager's Fortune and threw her into a holding cell. 3 other captives were already there. Delvani merchants with blue skin and large, frightened eyes. They had been captured 2 days ago from a different ship. The energy barrier hummed as it sealed Yuna inside. She sat down on the cold metal floor and looked around the cell. She counted the guards. She noted the position of the security cameras. She studied the pattern of the patrol routes. Then she closed her eyes and waited. On the bridge, Commander Ravik reviewed the capture. "What did we get from the shuttle?" "Nothing valuable," Tan reported with disappointment. The pilot had nothing. The female passenger only had a backpack with personal items. No credits, no technology worth selling. Ravik shrugged. "The girl is young, healthy. She might be worth something as a ransom. Humans are sentimental about their own kind. Check her belongings anyway. Maybe we missed something." Tan nodded and took Yuna's backpack to the inspection bay. He dumped everything onto the metal table. A water canteen, dried rations, a worn paper book, a small photograph of a family standing in front of a simple house, a few items of clothing. At the bottom of the backpack, folded neatly, was something wrapped in plastic. Tan pulled it out and unwrapped it carelessly. It was a uniform, black, matte black, made of material that seemed to absorb the light around it. There were patches on the shoulders, symbols stitched in silver thread. Tan stared at the uniform for a long moment. His 4 hands began to shake. His yellow eyes went wide with something that Velkari raiders were not supposed to feel. Fear. Pure cold fear. He turned and ran to find Commander Ravik. In her cell, Yuna sat with her eyes still closed, but the corners of her lips curved upward just slightly. A very small smile. Tan ran through the corridors of the Ravager's Fortune like a creature being chased by death itself. His boots pounded against the metal floor. His breath came in sharp gasps. Other crew members stepped aside as he passed, confused by the terror on his face. He found Commander Ravik in the mess hall, eating a meal with some of the senior officers. They were laughing about the day's easy capture. Another soft human, another helpless victim, just another day of easy work. "Commander," Tan burst through the door, holding the black uniform in his shaking hands. "Commander, you need to see this. Now." Ravik looked up annoyed. "What is wrong with you, Tan? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Worse," Tan whispered. He walked to the table and spread the uniform out so everyone could see. "We made a terrible mistake. This was in the human female's backpack." The laughter died. Every Velkari at the table stared at the black uniform. At first, they did not understand. It was just clothing, just fabric and thread. Then Ravik saw the patches on the shoulders. A silver crescent moon, 3 small stars arranged in a triangle, and below them 2 words stitched in Galactic Common, the universal language that every spacefaring species could read. Terran Nijstwach. The room went completely silent. Ravik felt his throat tighten. His 4 hands gripped the edge of the table so hard that his claws left marks in the metal. "That's not possible," he said. His voice was barely a whisper. "She's just a girl, a tourist. We scanned her. No military implants, no combat modifications, no weapons of any kind." Nightwatch doesn't use implants, said a voice from the corner of the room. Everyone turned to look. It was old Gorvan, one of the veteran crew members. He had served on the Ravager's Fortune for 20 years. He was missing his left arm, lost in a battle long ago. His gray skin was scarred, and his yellow eyes held memories of things he wished he could forget. I served on the border during the Keth uprising, Gorvan continued. He was not looking at anyone. He was staring at the wall, lost in the past. I saw what a single Nightwatch operative did to an entire battalion. 300 soldiers, armed, trained, ready for war. He paused. His remaining hand was trembling. One human walked into their camp, just one, small, quiet, looked like nobody important. The next morning, every single soldier was dead. No witnesses, no survivors, no explanation, just bodies. Gorvan finally looked at Ravik. Nightwatch doesn't need implants or modifications. They don't need weapons. They are trained from childhood, pure humans, no changes, no enhancements. That's what makes them terrifying. You can't scan for them. You can't detect them. They look exactly like every other human in the galaxy. Ravik snatched the uniform from the table and examined it desperately. Maybe it was fake. Maybe it was stolen. Maybe the girl had found it somewhere or bought it as a souvenir. Then he found the name tag stitched inside the collar. Lieutenant Yuna Park, Terran NIGHTWATCH, Special Reconnaissance. His hand stopped moving. His blood felt cold in his veins. Get everyone to the inspection bay, Ravik ordered. His voice cracked. Now. The crew of the Ravager's Fortune gathered around the metal table where Yuna's belongings were spread out. 42 Velkari raiders, all of them armed, all of them dangerous, all of them scared. Tan picked up each item with trembling fingers. Water canteen, standard issue, dried rations, a paper book, a photograph. Ravik looked at the photograph. A simple picture of a family, an older man and woman, a young girl standing between them. They were in front of a small house with a garden. Green hills stretched out behind them under a blue sky. It looked like a peaceful place, a safe place. Is that her? Someone asked. The girl in the picture. Ravik compared the photograph to his memory of the captive in the holding cell. Same dark hair, same calm eyes, same face, just older now. Yes, he said, that's her. She looks so normal, Tan whispered. She looks like just a regular human. How can she be? He couldn't finish the sentence. One of the younger crew members, a Velkari named Drex, spoke up. Maybe we're overreacting. Maybe this is all a trick. Humans are known for their deception. Perhaps she carries this uniform to scare off pirates. It could be a fake. A fake, Gorvan let out a bitter laugh. Look at the material, look at the stitching, look at the insignia. That uniform is real. It was made by Earth's military. You can't buy something like that in a market. You can't steal it. The only way to have a Nightwatch uniform is to earn it. Ravik put the uniform down slowly. His mind was racing, trying to think of a way out of this situation. What do we know about Nightwatch? He asked. What do the files say? Tan pulled up his datapad and searched for any information. Most of it was classified, locked behind security walls that pirates could not break. But there were rumors, stories, warnings passed from species to species across the galaxy. Terran Nightwatch was created after the Endari genocide, Tan read aloud. A human colony called Gideon 7 was destroyed by the Endari Collective. 12,000 civilians were killed. Among them were the families of 7 Terran Defense Force operators. He scrolled down, his voice growing quieter with each word. Those 7 operators asked to be released from military service. When their request was denied, they resigned anyway and disappeared. 8 months later, the entire leadership of the Endari Collective was found dead. All 200 members, on 47 different worlds, in a single night. The room was silent. Every Velkari was listening with growing horror. No witnesses, Tan continued. No evidence, no survivors. The 7 operators returned and offered their skills to Earth's government. Nightwatch was born. He looked up from his datapad. Current membership is unknown. Estimates range from 500 to 5,000. They have completed 847 confirmed operations. Someone asked the question everyone was thinking. How many of those operations failed? Tan's voice was barely a whisper. 0. Commander Ravik felt something he had not felt in many years. He felt small. He felt helpless. He felt like prey. She was on a civilian shuttle, he said slowly, trying to understand. She was just sitting there, reading a book. For 3 days she was on that shuttle doing nothing, and we just took her. Old Gorven nodded. She let us take her. Don't you understand? She saw our ship coming, she knew what we were, she knew exactly what would happen, and she let us bring her aboard. Why? Drex asked. Why would she do that? No one had an answer. In the holding cell, far from the inspection bay, Una sat with her back against the wall. The 3 Delvani merchants were huddled in the opposite corner, watching her with wide eyes. They had been talking quietly among themselves when one of them noticed the guards acting strangely. The guards were whispering to each other, looking at the human female. Their faces showed fear. Then word spread quickly through the ship, as rumors always do. The human in the cell was not an ordinary captive. She was something else, something terrifying. One of the Delvani merchants worked up enough courage to speak. Is it true, he asked Una, what they're saying about you? Una opened her eyes. Her face was calm and peaceful, like she was sitting in a garden instead of a prison cell. What are they saying? She asked. The merchant swallowed hard. They're saying you're Nightwatch. Una smiled. It was a gentle smile, a kind smile, the kind of smile a teacher might give to a scared child. You should rest, she said softly. Everything is going to be fine, I promise. The merchant wanted to believe her. Something in her voice made him want to trust her completely, but he could not shake the feeling that her words were not meant to comfort him. They were a warning to everyone else on the ship. Commander Ravik locked himself in his private quarters with his most trusted officers. They needed information. They needed to understand exactly what they were dealing with. Ravik pulled up his personal datapad and entered a series of codes. These were not ordinary files. These were classified intelligence reports that he had bought 3 years ago from a corrupt government official. They had cost him a fortune in credits and several dangerous favors. At the time, he thought he had wasted his money. Now he wished he had read them more carefully. The first file opened on his screen. The header was simple and terrifying. Terran NIGHTWATCH Threat Assessment. Absolute. Ravik began to read aloud for his officers. His voice grew quieter with each sentence. Terran Nightwatch is the most classified human military organization in existence. Official records deny that it exists. The Terran government refuses to acknowledge any connection to Nightwatch operations. This denial is itself a strategy, designed to create uncertainty and fear among potential enemies. Tan stood by the door, listening with growing dread. Old Gorvin sat in the corner, his single arm wrapped around himself like he was trying to hold himself together. Ravik continued reading. Nightwatch operatives are selected in childhood. Candidates are identified through a series of psychological and physical tests administered in schools across all human colonies. Children who pass these tests are invited to special academies. Their families are told they are attending advanced education programs. The true nature of their training is never revealed. They take children, Drex whispered. They train children to be. He couldn't finish the sentence. Training lasts for 15 years, Ravik read. Students learn combat, infiltration, survival, psychology, languages, and dozens of other skills. They are taught to blend into any environment. They learn to use any object as a weapon. They study alien species, their cultures, their weaknesses, their fears. Gorvin spoke up. I heard a story once. A Nightwatch operative was captured by the Drell Syndicate. They took everything from him, his clothes, his weapons. They locked him in a bare metal room with nothing but smooth walls. They thought he was helpless. He paused, his eyes distant. He killed 6 guards using only a food tray. When they sent more guards, he killed them too. By the time the syndicate realized what was happening, he had already reached the bridge and taken control of the ship. Ravik scrolled to the next section of the file. His hands were shaking now. Nightwatch operatives receive no biological modifications, no cybernetic implants, no enhanced strength or speed. They remain pure humans in every way. This is a deliberate choice. Modified soldiers can be detected by scanners. Enhanced soldiers require maintenance and special equipment. Nightwatch operatives need nothing. They can travel anywhere, blend in everywhere, and strike without warning. Tan walked closer to look at the screen. How do they fight then? Humans are physically weaker than most species. They have no claws, no armor, no venom. How can they defeat trained soldiers? Ravik found the answer in the next paragraph. Nightwatch operatives are trained to exploit the weaknesses of every known species in the galaxy. They study anatomy, psychology, and combat techniques. They learn where to strike to cause maximum damage with minimum effort. A single blow to the right point on a Velkari body can cause instant paralysis. A certain pressure on a Drell's neck will stop their heart in 3 seconds. Every Velkari in the room instinctively touched their own necks. Perhaps most importantly, Ravik continued reading, Nightwatch operatives are trained to use their environment as their weapon. They do not need guns or knives. Everything around them becomes a tool for destruction. A drinking glass, a computer cable, a piece of cloth. In the hands of a trained operative, anything can kill. Ravik set down the datapad. He could not read anymore. The words were making him feel sick. There's more, Tan said quietly. Look at the mission reports. The screen showed a list of confirmed Nightwatch operations. The list was long, very long. 847 entries, each one a nightmare for someone. Ravik picked one at random and opened it. Mission 294, KORVAL Station Incident. The Corval Syndicate was holding 200 human workers as forced labor on a mining station. Terran authorities demanded their release. The Syndicate refused. 2 weeks later, a single Nightwatch operative infiltrated the station disguised as a maintenance worker. Over the course of one night, she disabled all weapon systems, locked down all escape routes, and neutralized all 48 security personnel. The workers were evacuated without a single casualty. The syndicate leaders were found bound and unconscious, with evidence of their crimes compiled and ready for prosecution. Ravik clicked on another report. Mission 651, The Ambassador's Rescue. Ambassador Lin was kidnapped by the Veth cartel while traveling in neutral space. Ransom demands were made. Before negotiations could begin, a Nightwatch team of 3 operatives located the cartel's hidden base on an uncharted moon. They infiltrated the compound, bypassed over 100 armed guards, and extracted the ambassador without firing a single shot. The cartel did not realize the ambassador was gone until the next morning. None of the guards remembered seeing anything unusual. Tan scrolled through more reports. Each one was the same story with different details. Impossible infiltrations, silent takedowns, enemies neutralized without ever seeing their attacker. Look at this one, Tan said, his voice tight with fear. Mission 847, the HEYWOD family. A human family was taken hostage by the Black Nebula pirates during a raid on a cruise liner. The pirates demanded 10 million credits. The family's teenage daughter sent a coded message to Terran authorities. 3 days later, a Nightwatch operative boarded the pirate vessel using a damaged escape pod as cover. The operative freed the hostages, disabled the ship's weapons and engines, and restrained all 52 crew members. The pirates were handed over to authorities. None of them could explain how one person had defeated their entire crew. Ravik felt his legs go weak. He sat down heavily in his chair. 52 crew members, he whispered. They had 52 people. We only have 42. Old Gorvin laughed. It was not a happy sound. It doesn't matter if we had 100. It doesn't matter if we had 1,000. You still don't understand. Nightwatch operatives don't fight fair battles. They don't give you a chance to defend yourself. They wait. They watch. They learn. And then they strike when you least expect it. You won't see her coming. You won't hear her move. You'll just wake up in restraints wondering what happened. If you wake up at all, Tan added quietly. Drex, the young raider who had suggested the uniform might be fake, looked like he was about to vomit. What do we do? How do we protect ourselves? Ravik pulled up one last section of the intelligence file. It was titled Recommended Protocols. Standard protocol when Nightwatch personnel are identified, he read. Do not engage. Do not detain. If possible, release immediately and withdraw. If release is not possible, contact the nearest Terran authority and request instructions. Do not attempt to negotiate directly with the operative. Do not attempt to threaten or coerce the operative. Do not. He stopped reading. The next line made his blood freeze. What? Tan asked. Do not what? Ravik's voice was barely audible. Do not kill the operative. Nightwatch does not abandon its own. If an operative is killed, the response will be complete and absolute. There will be no negotiation. There will be no mercy. There will be no survivors. The room was completely silent. Every Velkari understood now. They had not captured a prisoner. They had brought death itself onto their ship. Far below in the holding cell, Yuna sat peacefully with her eyes closed. The Delvani merchants watched her with a mixture of terror and awe. She had not moved in hours. She had not spoken. She was just waiting. One of the merchants, finally, understood what she was waiting for. She was waiting for night. Commander Ravik gathered his entire crew on the bridge. 42 Velkari raiders stood in nervous silence, waiting for orders. The mood on the ship had changed completely. Just hours ago, they had been celebrating another easy capture. Now they looked like soldiers preparing for a war they knew they could not win. We have 3 options, Ravik said. His voice was steady, but his hands were not. First, we could kill her, space her out the airlock and pretend this never happened. Nobody spoke. They all knew what would follow if they killed a Nightwatch operative. The intelligence file had been very clear about that. Second, we could run, take the ship to the outer rim, hide in some forgotten corner of the galaxy where no one will find us. Old Gorvin shook his head. Nightwatch tracked a target across 3 galactic arms once. It took them 2 years, but they found him. There is no corner of space far enough. Ravik nodded grimly. Which leaves us with option 3. We go to the holding cell right now. We apologize. We release her unharmed. We beg for mercy and hope she decides to let us live. The crew exchanged uncertain looks. Velkari raiders did not beg. They did not apologize. They were predators, not prey. But today was different. Do we really have to do this? Drex asked. He was still hopping. There was another way. She's just one human, one small female. There are 42 of us. We have weapons. We have armor. She has nothing. She has training, Gorvin said quietly. She has skills we can't imagine. And she has been on this ship for 6 hours now. 6 hours to study our patterns. 6 hours to find our weaknesses. 6 hours to make her plan. Ravik made his decision. We negotiate. We surrender if we have to. I would rather live as a coward than die as a fool. The command crew followed Ravik down to the holding level. Their boots echoed on the metal floor. The corridor seemed darker than usual. Every shadow seemed threatening now. 2 guards stood outside the holding cell, looking nervous. They had heard the rumors. They knew who was behind that energy barrier. Open the barrier, Ravik ordered. I need to speak with the prisoner. The guards hesitated. Opening the barrier meant removing the only thing between them and the Nightwatch operative, but they followed orders and deactivated the energy field. Yuna was standing when they arrived. She had not been standing before. Somehow, she knew they were coming. The three Delvani merchants had pressed themselves into the far corner of the cell, as far from her as possible. They understood now that being close to her was the most dangerous place on the ship. "Lieutenant Park," Ravik began. He tried to keep his voice calm and respectful. "There has been a terrible misunderstanding. We did not know who you were. We did not know." "You knew I was human," Yuna said. Her voice was soft, gentle, almost kind, but something in her tone made Ravik stop mid-sentence. "You knew I was unarmed," she continued. "You knew I was alone. You knew I was traveling on a civilian shuttle with no weapons and no military escort. You thought I was weak. You thought I was helpless. You thought I was easy prey." She stepped closer to the entrance of the cell. Her movements were smooth and graceful, like water flowing over stones. "You attacked a civilian vessel. You killed its pilot, a man named Do-yun." Her dark eyes met Ravik's yellow ones. He was 26 years old. He had a daughter, a little girl named Somi. "She will grow up without a father because of you." Ravik felt his throat tighten. He had not thought about the pilot. He had not thought about anything except the easy credits. "We will pay compensation," he said desperately. "To the pilot's family, to you, whatever you want, name your price." Yuna tilted her head slightly as if considering his offer. Then she smiled. It was not a threatening smile. It was patient, understanding, the kind of smile you might give to a child who doesn't understand what they have done wrong. "I was not on that shuttle by accident, Commander." The words hit Ravik like a physical blow. He felt cold, so cold. "What do you mean?" he whispered. "We've been tracking your crew for 2 years," Yuna said calmly. 47 raids, 300 civilians taken from their ships and sold into slavery or held for ransom, 62 confirmed deaths, men, women, children." She paused to let the numbers sink in. "Terran Nightwatch was given this assignment 8 months ago. I was placed on that shuttle specifically because your ship had been spotted in this sector. I was the bait, Commander, and you took it." Tan stepped back involuntarily. You wanted us to capture you." "How else would I get aboard your ship?" Yuna asked simply. "Your vessel never docks at stations where law enforcement operates. You never answer hails from military vessels. You only approach ships you believe to be helpless, so I became helpless. And here I am." Ravik's mind was racing. This was worse than he had imagined, much worse. "We'll surrender," he said quickly. "Full surrender. We'll turn ourselves in to Terran authorities. We'll confess to everything, please. Just tell us what to do." Yuna was quiet for a moment. Her eyes seemed to look right through him, seeing things he couldn't understand. "That was the option," she said finally, 6 hours ago." The lights flickered. Everyone looked up at the ceiling. The lights flickered again, then stabilized. Tan checked his communicator. His face went pale. "Commander, we've lost contact with engineering." Ravik spun around. "What? How is that possible? She's been in the cell the entire time." But even as he said the words, he knew something was wrong. He looked back at Yuna. She had not moved. She was still standing in the exact same spot, with the exact same calm expression on her face. But something felt different. Something felt very, very wrong. Then he noticed it. The energy barrier was still down. The guards had never turned it back on. "Check the other decks," Ravik ordered frantically. "Check the weapons systems. Check the communications array. Check everything." His officers scrambled to their communicators, trying to reach different parts of the ship. One by one, they reported in. "Medical bay is not responding. Weapons control is silent. Life support is operating, but I can't reach anyone in that section. The armory codes have been changed. We're locked out." Ravik turned back to Yuna. His voice was shaking now. How? You've been in this cell. We've been watching you on cameras. You never moved. How is this possible? Yuna smiled again. That same patient, gentle smile. Commander, do you know how long it takes me to disable one of your guards? About 4 seconds. Do you know how long your guards take to complete one patrol circuit of this level? 12 minutes. Do you know how many times your guards have completed their patrol since I was brought aboard? She didn't wait for an answer. 32 times. That's almost 6.5 hours of time when no one was directly watching this cell. That's a lot of time, Commander. I didn't need all of it. Ravik's legs felt weak. The lights flickered again, and this time they went out completely. Emergency red lighting activated, casting everything in a bloody glow. In the dim red light, Yuna's eyes seemed to reflect something ancient, something patient, something that had been waiting for exactly this moment. The pilot you killed, she said softly. Do-yun, he asked you to let him go. He told you he had a daughter. You killed him anyway. She took a step forward, out of the cell, into the corridor. The guards did not move to stop her. They could not move. They were frozen with fear. Now his daughter will receive compensation from the Terran government. She will be cared for. She will have a future. Yuna's voice was still gentle, still calm. But you, Commander, you and your crew have no future anymore, not the one you planned. The lights went out completely. In the absolute darkness, Ravik heard his crew members start to scream. Then the screaming stopped, and there was only silence. The Velkari raider ship Ravager's Fortune was found 3 days later, drifting slowly through neutral space. Its engines were offline. Its weapons were disabled. A distress signal was broadcasting on all frequencies. A joint Terran Galactic patrol team received the signal and changed course to investigate. When they arrived at the location, they expected to find wreckage. Instead, they found an intact ship floating peacefully in the void. Captain Minyu led the boarding team. He was an experienced officer with 20 years in the Terran Defense Force. He had seen many strange things in his career, but nothing had prepared him for what he found on the Ravager's Fortune. The first thing they noticed was the silence. No movement, no sounds, no signs of battle. They moved through the ship carefully, weapons ready, expecting an ambush at any moment. But no ambush came. The corridors were empty. The lights were functioning. Everything seemed almost normal. Then they found the first crew member. A Velkari raider was sitting on the floor of the corridor, his back against the wall. His 4 arms were bound behind him with simple plastic restraints. His weapons were neatly stacked on the floor beside him. He was alive, unharmed, but his yellow eyes stared at nothing. "Sir, there's another one over here," one of the soldiers called out. They found more crew members in the next corridor, and more in the one after that. Every single Velkari on the ship had been restrained in the same way. Simple plastic bindings around their wrists, their weapons placed in neat piles beside them, alive, unharmed, but unable to move. Captain Minyu counted as they went. 10, 20, 30, 40, 42 in total. Every single member of the pirate crew, captured and restrained. "Captain," a soldier called from the armory, "you need to see this." Minyu walked to the armory and stopped in the doorway. Every weapon on the ship had been brought here. Energy rifles, plasma pistols, knives, grenades, all of them had been carefully disassembled. The pieces were arranged in perfect rows, organized by type and size. It looked like an exhibit in a museum. "Who did this?" one of the young soldiers whispered. "How is this possible?" They found more evidence as they explored the ship. In the communications room, all the security footage from the past 6 hours had been compiled and saved to a data chip. In the captain's quarters, they found 47 files containing evidence of raids, kidnappings, and murders. Everything was organized and documented, ready for prosecution. And in the navigation room, they found Commander Ravik. He was sitting in his chair, his arms bound like all the others. But unlike his crew, who were simply restrained and quiet, Ravik was different. His eyes were wide open. His body was rigid. He had not moved in 3 days. He had not spoken. He had not slept. He had not eaten. When Captain Minu tried to release him, Ravik flinched so violently that he nearly fell out of his chair. Then he started whispering, the same words over and over again. She never made a sound. She never made a sound. She never made a sound. The medical team had to sedate him to bring him aboard the rescue vessel. In the holding cell, the 3 Delvani merchants were still alive and unharmed. They were sitting calmly, eating emergency rations that someone had brought them. When Captain Minu entered the cell, they looked up with expressions of wonder and relief. "What happened here?" Minu asked. "Can you tell me what you saw?" The oldest merchant stood up slowly. His blue hands were steady, but his voice shook slightly as he spoke. "The human woman, the one they captured, she told us to close our eyes and count to 1,000. And then nothing." The merchant shook his head. "We closed our eyes, we counted. When we opened them again, she was gone." "Gone where?" "I don't know, she just wasn't there anymore. The energy barrier was still active. The guards were still outside, but she was gone." Minu felt a chill run down his spine. What happened next? "We heard nothing," the merchant said. "That's what was so strange. No screams, no alarms, no weapon fire, just silence. Complete, absolute silence. For maybe 40 minutes we heard nothing at all." He paused, remembering. "Then the barrier deactivated, and she came back. The human woman, she came back to the cell." The merchant nodded. "She walked in like nothing had happened. She was straightening her clothes. Simple civilian clothes, not military, not armor, just normal clothes. She smiled at us. A kind smile, and she said help was coming." Captain Minu was quiet for a long moment. "Did she say anything else?" "One of us asked her a question," the merchant admitted. "We asked her what she was, what kind of creature could do what she did." "What did she say?" The merchant's voice was barely a whisper. "She said she was a school teacher, 3rd grade, back on Earth. She said this was just her other job." The rescue operation continued for several hours. The Delvani merchants were transferred to a medical ship. The 42 Velkari pirates were taken into custody. The evidence files were handed over to the Galactic Justice Council. Commander Ravik was placed in a medical facility for psychological treatment. The doctors said he was suffering from severe trauma. He kept repeating the same phrase whenever anyone came near him. "She never made a sound. She never made a sound." The security footage from the Ravager's fortune was analyzed by military experts. They watched it dozens of times, looking for clues about what had happened. The footage showed Yuna sitting in her cell for hours, not moving, not speaking, just sitting with her eyes closed. Then at exactly 03:47 ship time, she opened her eyes. The footage showed her looking directly at the camera. She smiled slightly. Then she stood up and walked to the corner of the cell that was just outside the camera's view. And then she was gone. The cameras in the corridors showed nothing unusual. The guards continued their patrols. The crew members went about their duties. Nobody noticed anything wrong. But one by one, crew members started disappearing from the footage. They would walk around a corner and they simply would not appear on the next camera. Later, they would be found in different parts of the ship, restrained and unconscious, with no memory of what had happened. The experts slowed down the footage and watched frame by frame. They enhanced the audio and listened for any sound. Nothing. One moment the crew members were walking normally. The next moment they were on the floor. No struggle, no sound, nothing. "How is this possible?" one of the analysts asked. "How can someone move through an entire ship without being seen by a single camera? How can someone subdue 42 armed raiders without making a single sound?" No one had an answer. The story spread quickly, as such stories always do. In cantinas and spaceports across the galaxy, spacers whispered about the Ravager's fortune and its terrifying fate. The details changed with each telling, growing more dramatic and more impossible. But the core of the story stayed the same. A crew of pirates had captured a human female. They had emptied her backpack, looking for valuables, and at the bottom of the bag they had found a black uniform with silver insignia. Terran NIJSTWATCH. Species who had once considered humans to be soft and weak began to look at them differently. That quiet traveler reading in the corner of a shuttle, that friendly worker helping with cargo at the docks, that young student backpacking between planets. Any one of them could be Nightwatch. Any one of them could be waiting. And the smart ones, the ones who wanted to survive, learned the most important lesson the galaxy had to offer. Never threaten a human. Never attack a human vessel. And never, ever touch a human's backpack. Because you never know what might be folded at the bottom. Somewhere in the galaxy, on a small blue planet called Earth, a young woman named Una Park walked into an elementary school. She was wearing a simple dress and carrying a cup of coffee. Her dark hair was tied back in a neat knot. "Good morning, Miss Park," the children called out as she entered the classroom. "Good morning, everyone," she said with a warm smile. "Did you all finish your homework?" 20 small faces looked up at her with adoration. Their teacher was kind. Their teacher was patient. Their teacher always helped them when they were confused. None of them knew about her other job. None of them knew what she did during her summer vacations. And that was exactly how she wanted it. Outside the window, the sun was rising over green hills. Somewhere in the teacher's closet, hidden beneath old sweaters and forgotten boxes, a worn canvas backpack sat in the darkness. Inside the backpack, a black uniform waited. Patient. Ready. For the next time,